So, this past week, the repairman actually came to my room in order to fix some pipes, some leaking pipes, and he had to drill a hole on my wall. And I was not forewarned over the extent of the damage that could be could come from that. But the only thing I was told was that my desk was going to be dusty. And so I covered my desk. But what I didn't know was when I came back later that day after work, I discovered that my entire room was dusty. Like literally, it was dusty everywhere. The floor was dusty, my carpet was dusty, my books were dusty, my bed was dusty, along with all the bed sheets and blankets. Everything was dusty. I was really frustrated that day, and I had to spend the entire evening after work cleaning my blankets, my comforter, my bed sheet, my pillowcases, everything, and I had to mop the floor twice at least. And so it was tiring, it was exasperating, and yeah, I also had to like wipe almost every single one of my books from the dust. And it was not normal dust, it was cement dust, it was concrete dust. And those things, they feel different. They make me itch and they smell different. And not only dust, I also had like small debris of cement everywhere on my desk, on my carpet. Whenever I lie down, there is something pricking you, and it's the debris. And it was really annoying. But I think I was able to do like most of the cleaning done. But until today, I still feel a little bit of dustiness on my floor. So back to bookish topics. So this past week, I actually managed to finish one book, and that is a horror story. And this one is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. And I would say that this is kind of like my very one of my early attempts in horror stories, horror books, and I must say that it didn't really meet my expectation. Though to be fair, I am not really experienced in the horror genre, so maybe I should, I don't know, try to read more horror stories and see if I could manage my expectation, see if the genre as a whole can live up to my expectation. I don't know. But for the first book, or like for one of the earliest horror book that I read properly, this book was not really interesting for me. I didn't particularly enjoy this one. Fortunately, it's a small book, so I managed to finish it. There is always that kind of satisfaction that comes after you finish a book. It doesn't matter whether the book is interesting or not. That particular satisfaction of ending or finishing a book, it's always going to be there. But the satisfaction coming from experiencing the book, that's another story. So, The Woman in Black is about a lawyer named Arthur Kipps. He is supposed to go to a house named Eel Marsh House in order to sort out some papers, some documents left by the deceased owner, who goes by the name of Mrs. Drablow. And as expected, when he gets to the house, when he gets to Eel Marsh house, encounters ghosts, and he gets scared, and stuff happens, and that's it. Yeah, it's a short book, but that's pretty much it. This is mostly about the guy getting scared and also at the same time trying to do his job. So, what is my problem with that? Well, there are a few actually. The first one is that when I read horrors, or when I engage myself in horror media, like for example, horror movie, one thing that I really like is some motivation. I want to know why that thing, or the thing that scares people, becomes scary or becomes evil. Because usually the scary stuff are the antagonists, are the evil stuff. So I want to know why they become evil. That's, for me, is probably the juiciest bit in a horror narrative. Unless, of course, if the creator decides to make something that is inherently evil across many cultures, such as the devil, for example, to be evil. If the evil thing comes from, say, a dead human or some spirit or whatever, I would prefer that there is some logic as to how that thing becomes evil. I don't know. This too demanding? I don't know. Maybe some books do not work like this, but this is kind of like what I like to see. I don't really like to see just something become evil out of nowhere, become crazy out of nowhere. That is just not so interesting for me. And another issue that I have with this book is that the narrator, uh, the narrator is actually the main character, which was the lawyer Arthur Kipps, and is the one that gets to have all of the action and being scared in this book. I'm fine with him being scared. There's something that I can't exactly pinpoint. Like, I don't really understand why I find it really difficult to root for this guy. Like, I don't even care if he survives at the end. For some reason, this guy just feels so annoying, and I'm not sure why. Maybe he just feels like too naive. He's lacking genre savviness. Um, or maybe it's because he keeps on prattling about things that aren't related to the ghosts. I don't know. I guess normal people does that. Um, but I would have just preferred if throughout the story he spends all of his time thinking about the ghost, being scared, being psychologically disturbed. I think I would have preferred that. I think I would have preferred a more tortured version of the narrator rather than someone who is, when he goes to the haunted house, he's scared, he's hearing noises, he's seeing stuff, and then when he's out of it, when he talks to other people, he becomes suddenly kind of not scared anymore, and he talks optimistically about his future, his job. Like, seriously, I don't care about your family. I don't care about your job. I just care about you and the ghost. But anyway, I gave this book 2 stars. I would also like kind of consider giving it 3 stars because there are some bits in this book that was kind of creepy, but I don't know. Sometimes I've read this book at night, so I do feel a little bit of creepiness coming in, but it just didn't feel satisfying. It was disappointing. Anyway, talking about ghosts, I think this is a good segue to what I am currently reading right now. And one of the books I'm currently reading is a small book as well, written by a Mexican author. This is Juan Rulfo's Pedro Paramo, and this one has tons of ghosts. So it's about a guy who's coming to a town called Comala, and he wants to meet his father. I think his father who kind of abandons them, or his father that he grew up without. So he comes to this town, and it turns out that many people in that town are ghosts. And I'm not sure if this character, this guy Juan, he actually knows about that. I'm not sure if he's aware that people in that town are ghosts, but the way that they talk, and for me, really implies that they are dead. But at the same time, I also felt like Juan is kind of clueless about that. So that's weird. But I've only gotten into a few pages of this book. I'm not sure how the rest of this book will play out. So I'm really curious. But that premise is already quite interesting. The whole thing with a town fully inhabited by ghosts, and the main character is seemingly kind of oblivious to that. Certainly something that I would love to read further, and maybe I could finish this fast too because it's a small book. It's only 100 plus pages. So the next book is also a book originally written in Spanish and translated into the English, but this one was published way, much earlier. And this one is by Emilia Pardo Bazan. This is The House of Uloa. This book is, it's from a Spanish author, originally written in Spanish, translated into the English by Paul O'Prey and Lucia Graves. So this book I've read, I think about 10% or 20%, and it's about a priest who comes to a house of a marquis, and that priest is like this really clean, really like a goody two shoes kind of guy who is really religious, and he goes to this house in order to straighten things out, to sort out some papers, I guess, to manage the religious affairs, I suppose, in that house. But the inhabitant of that house, which is the house of Uloa, those people aren't exactly the people that would respond well to the attempts of, straightening them out. They live the lives of these people are really naughty. They drink a lot. I think it's kind of interesting, although the writing wise, it's okay so far. I wouldn't say it's super magnificent, but I guess it's kind of okay. It has a little bit of comedic undertones to that, but I think I just have to read more and see how it will be. One book that I definitely have spent most of my time in reading is definitely How to Be Both by Alice Smith. I'm still reading this book. So this book has two parts. There are two parts of the story. The first part is actually taking place in the modern world, and it's about a girl named George who lost her mother. And the second part is about an Italian Renaissance painter named Francesco. Now, I already finished with the story about George, but I've not really, read a lot about Francesco's story. So I'm gonna continue with that. But there's something different about the writing of Francesco's parts. It is a little bit disorientating. The style is much different. So, honestly speaking, it does take me a little while to really get into that particular part. So I think I'm gonna take a little bit longer for that. And I hope that, this I'll try to kind of like finish this part for the next week. But as for what I think about this book, overall I would say from what I've read so far, I really enjoyed it. It's a lovely book, and if you are interested in reading it, you should definitely try. I am kind of liking it so far. I just pulled the curtain a little bit because it's starting to get really sunny and glaring and a little bit warm as well. And moving on, another book that I also started, and this one is a group read organized by Jyotsna from Jyotsna's Bookscapades. This is the second group read that I'm joining with her, and this one is Train to Pakistan by Khushwant Singh. So this book is a historical fiction, and it's a very small book. So we'll be reading this book for a period of 2 weeks, I think. And the check-in will happen next Sunday. It is a place Khushwant Singh goes on to tell us at the beginning of this classic novel, where Sikhs and Muslims have lived together in peace for hundreds of years. Then one day at the end of the summer, the ghost train arrives, a silent, incredible funeral train loaded with the bodies of thousands of refugees, bringing the village its first taste of the horrors of the civil war. Train to Pakistan is the story of this isolated village that is plunged into the abyss of religious hate. It is also the story of a Sikh boy and a Muslim girl whose love endures and transcends the ravages of war. So the blurb already sounds extremely dramatic. Let's see how the book fares. So for the most part, the books I'm currently reading does seem kind of serious, and maybe a little bit, some bits of sadness, and some angst there, some anger, and it's not fun. I'm looking for something light, something happy, something funny. And so I started reading Some Tame Gazelle by Barbara Pym. So this book was actually recommended by Shawn, the book Maniac. And it arrived like a few weeks ago after I ordered it from Book Depository some months ago. And so far, I am about 10% into this book, and I like the writing. I mean, just look at the number of tabs I have so far, because there are a few things that I enjoy in this book. And this this is a this is an interesting, funny book. It's about this. So far, from what I gather, it's about these two women, Harriet and Belinda. They are sisters, and they are, I think, in their 50s. They are not married. And what they've been doing so far in this book is, they've pretty much been engaging in some trivial stuff in their lives. But mostly they talk about guys, which I think is interesting. I mean, who doesn't like to hear stories about women talking about guys? And this is a story about older women talking about guys, so that's even more interesting. What I find really interesting about this also is the author. I mean, I looked at the first page, and I saw this photo of the author holding a cat. And as it turned out, if you Google Barbara Pym, most likely you are going to see this photo of her holding a cat. And I don't usually see authors, holding a cat in their photos. And so this is really interesting. And it makes me even more excited to read her stories because, I think it's always interesting to see the point of view of someone who posed for a photo holding a cat. I kind of noticed that these days, a lot of the modern authors, when they took their photo, they tend to have this like really, not really, but kind of like subtly dramatic poses, with modern authors, and I do not have anything against authors posing dramatically for their headshots or portraits or whatever. Sometimes you would see authors posing like they are actors or fashion models. I just find that really interesting because I don't typically associate authors, writers, with these kinds of poses. But I suppose they can do that. It's fine. It does seem to give them, this kind of imposing display of stature, I suppose. And, authors can have a certain stature. It's fine. It's just weird. I mean, just look at the poses of the authors nominated for the Booker Prize. They kind of look dramatic. So those are kind of like some of the books I'm reading right now. I have been kind of cramming a lot of books into my currently reading list on Goodreads. And I've been really crazy about that. But I've been focusing on these books lately. So I watched a video by Berna's Bookish Adventures. If you have not watched her videos, if you have not seen her channel, check it out. I'll put down the link below. And one of her videos actually talk about the list of Turkish books that she would recommend. And I found that list to be really interesting. Two of the books she talked about in that list were books that I've already read, which was Orhan Pamuk's My Name is Red, and also Elif Shafak's The Architect's Apprentice. And there was, overall the list was really interesting, and one book really caught my attention. And I ordered this book early September, and it arrived surprisingly because I ordered it from Book Depository, and usually Book Depository would take an eternity for the goods to arrive. So I was really surprised that by the end of September the book already arrived. So this one was Ahmad Hamdi Tanpınar, and it's called the Time Regulation Institute. I mean, just look at that title. Hear the sound of that title. It's so dramatic. So, based on the description, her description of this book, Berna's description, this book is really interesting and it's really eccentric because it involves a little bit of timey-wimey stuff. I don't know, stuff related to time manipulation and things like that. Here is what it says in this fictional memoir of Hayri Irdal, troublesome boy, work-shy man, and feckless husband. Life is examined in all its double-crossing, chaotic, disastrous glory. From his youth dismantling timepieces while his family fell apart to his later years at the scandal-hit Time Regulation Institute, Hayri's absurdist misadventures play out as a brilliant allegory of the collision between East and West tradition and modernity. And one thing I discovered while just kind of checking out this book, there's the covers and inside of it, we have another author with a portrait holding a cat. So I think this is kind of like a common theme this week with, authors holding cats in their portraits. So I suppose this book would probably be interesting because the author himself also hold cats in the photo. So if you know of any other authors who hold cats in their portraits, let me know because I would love to check out their works. At least I want to check out their photos holding cats. I've been watching a lot of cat videos these days, mainly to kind of quench my desire to, physically pet a cat. Because it has been a long time since I last pet a cat, and I love cats, and that's the best thing I could do for now. That's it for my Bookish avec moi this week. So let me know if you have read any of these books. If you have any comments, write them down below. And I'll see you again in a different video. And until then, take care. Thanks for watching. And bye.